This woman right here, named Ivy Olson, a mother of two, was going through one of the hardest times in her life. That's until a supernatural event took place where she would receive a Thanksgiving gift that would change her life forever. In 1969, Ivy Olson, who was a young, recently divorced mother who just moved into a one-bedroom apartment with her two sons, which was on the second floor. Money was tight. Even though she worked at a doctor's office, Ivy had trouble making ends meet. Then, when it didn't feel like it could get worse, it did. On the morning of Thanksgiving, Ivy was laying there in bed and was thinking to herself, what is she going to do with her kids for Thanksgiving? She didn't really have anywhere to go to have a Thanksgiving meal, not even with family. She only had a little bit of food left in the fridge to eat or to give to her children. Ivy, feeling down and helpless that she couldn't provide a Thanksgiving dinner for her children, she built up the courage and said, you know what? I'm not going to let this day be ruined because we can't have a great Thanksgiving meal. She put on a smile, got the kids ready, grabbed what was left in the fridge, which honestly wasn't much, so that they could have a small picnic together at a local park, hoping her boys would have fun that day, even if they couldn't have a real Thanksgiving dinner. See, the thing is that Ivy just wanted to be able to provide food for her children. Coming back from the park, Ivy's boys told her, we're so hungry, and the helpless feeling came over her knowing that there was just nothing she could do. She had no money, no food, feeling so helpless and alone, wondering, how is she going to make it through this? Ivy and her boys got back to the apartment complex and they started to make their way up the stairs to go back to their apartment. That was on the second floor. Then the unexpected happened. As they were walking up the stairs, this old sweet lady came out of one of the bottom floor apartments and says, oh honey, calling for Ivy. Ivy looks at her thinking, well, I've never seen this lady before. The old lady invited Ivy and her two children to join her for dinner, but Ivy refused, saying, oh no, we don't want to impose, but the sweet lady kept insisting that they come over for dinner. So Ivy said, you know what, this is kind of an answered prayer. They walked back down the stairs and entered into the old lady's apartment to have dinner. Immediately, Ivy said that she felt at home. It was all dimly lit and the home felt cozy. The kitchen table was loaded with food, and on top of that, the lady had this incredible sweet presence to her. It was so comforting to Ivy and the children. It took Ivy's mind off of the horrible day that she was having. It was like this sweet old lady created all of this meal or this dinner, this experience just for them. Ivy would state that it was a moment in her life that she felt so special and a moment that she would never forget. About an hour and a half, they were finished and it was time for them to leave for the night. As Ivy and her sons were saying their goodbyes and leaving, this sweet lady and neighbor gave them each a gift, but they also left with something they desperately needed, which was food. Containers of leftover food that would last them for weeks. Ivy, thinking that this Thanksgiving was not just a random act of kindness by a thoughtful neighbor, this was a miracle. But the story doesn't stop here. What happens next is what makes this story so supernatural and unexplainable that it will have you scratching your head. The very next day, Ivy had gotten all the food out of the containers that her neighbor gave and stored her food away, washed the containers, and headed out the door and down the stairs to give back these containers to her neighbor. And on top of that, to thank her for what she did for her and her children the night before. She got down to the first floor where that sweet old lady lived. She knocked on the door, but no one answered. Thinking, this is odd, so she knocks again, and still there's no answer. She looked through the windows, and to her surprise, the place was absolutely dark, and not one piece of furniture was in there. It was vacant, not as it was the night before. Shocked and confused, Ivy immediately went to the manager's apartment, and when the manager opened the door, he said, hey, what can I do for you? Ivy says, where's the old lady that lives in apartment 15? The manager of the apartment says, ma'am, apartment 15 has been vacant for about 10 to 12 weeks now. Ivy, confused, told the man, "Hey, you don't understand. I just had dinner there last night. Thanksgiving dinner." The apartment manager looked at her with this puzzled look like, "Okay, lady, that can't be possible." He says, "Ivy, are you feeling okay?" Looking at the manager, Ivy just sat back and realized that a miracle in fact did happen. She turned around, calmly walked back up the stairs to her apartment. As she returned home, Ivy began going over the events of the previous night in her mind. She suddenly realized that the woman had known personal things about her, things that she couldn't possibly have known, like her favorite food, like they had that night. And the fact that the woman asked how things were going at her doctor's office, and Ivy would say, laughing, "How did you even know about that I worked at a doctor's office?" And the lady would tell her, I just know." Ivy came to face that she was actually fed by an angel. That hour and a half, Ivy was loved unconditionally, and this has changed her life so drastically. After dinner with this angel, Ivy made a promise that she would try to help other struggling single mothers, and she ended up keeping that promise. This radical change in Ivy's life is a way to give back to what was once given to her. That does it for today's supernatural story. Hit that thumbs up. Until next time, God bless.